What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to Crunch Time. I was thinking maybe we were just going to mail in this show, two-game, late slate. Everybody's yawning, everybody's sleepy. And then I heard that beat, I heard that music, and now I'm fired up. I'm ready to go. We're ready to get some winners here to you. Thanks for joining us on this smaller slate, late night edition. Joined by two of the sharpest minds in the biz. As always, this is Crunch Time, sponsored by Fanduel. We got TJ in the house. What up, TJ?
Doing well. Yeah, a little sleepy as well. We got the NFL game coming up after, though, and I built a bunch of lineups for that, and then I built one here for this little NBA slate. So ready to go for that one. Thursday is always a fun evening. Lots to watch on TV.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we got a lot of good stuff going on. You mentioned NFL, and the man to my right, it's this way is to my left, but it's right on your screen. He is on the NFL show following this show. What up, Kyle?
Yeah, doing good. Doing a little bit of a actually triple header because after that one I'm doing college football show. So yeah, loaded night, but hey,
all of that's tonight.
Yeah,
and then when he's done that, I'll be recording the morning grind with Will.
Holy smokes, that's crazy. All right, well, I thought that we were like going to have a quiet, easy night, but you boys are like, you're just gearing up. You're ready to go. You got a full night ahead of you. But first and foremost, the folks are not here to talk about the morning grind or your NFL nonsense or your college football. They're here for some hoops, the best sport in the biz. Yeah, that's right. The best sport. I said it and I meant it. I stand behind it. It is a small slate, but there's some injury news. There's one like high scoring game, one lower scoring game. I don't know. I think it's kind of fun for a two-gamer. Maybe I'm wrong. TJ, am I wrong?
No, I think you're pretty right because, like you said, that second game, higher totals, nice close spread in both of these games, though, and it's not that big of a difference where this first game couldn't potentially end up being the higher scoring game out of the two of them. So, for the Brooklyn Nets side of things, we have for the Miami Heat side of things, we have Tyler Herro out, and then for the Nets, they're without Ben Simmons and Cam Thomas. So undermanned on that game. And then for the second game of the slate, the Warriors are going to be without Steph Curry. So lots of value for a 2-game slate, and fun little game stacking potentials here as well.
Yeah, and the value there also like gives you different ways to build, and I just think it just opens things up more than what you normally see on a 2-game slate. Kyle, do you feel comfortable taking cash, or TJ, do you want to do that? Which we should have argued about this and drawn straws beforehand.
I will let TJ decide since I decided last week. So whatever he prefers.
TJ?
I'm going to do tournaments just because who wants to play cash on this slate?
Yeah, it is. And to be fair, we always say on a 2-game, Meansy always says like, and he's a cash guy. He's like, don't play cash. don't play cash on a 2-game slate. But if you want to, and even if you take these plays as just, these are some safer core plays, some single entry type plays, it doesn't necessarily have to be cash, but essentially these are the plays that the projections would most recommend. Is that a good way to say it, Kyle?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, even if you aren't playing cash, which I personally won't be playing cash tonight, I think you can still use these plays, like you mentioned, single entry type plays, safer options. Even on a 2-game slate, you're still going to have, these types of optimal type plays, even in contrarian lineups. I think it's just more so quick pivots that you can do, 2 or 3 pivots that you can make in these tournaments. But I think that's a great way to sum it up. Okay,
very nice. Mr. Gerg says, don't play cash, period. I'm with you, man. I don't understand. If I'm going to go through this whole process, I want to win $10,000, not 10. So
look, this because we got this single game football game later, we got lots of time. There's only 2 games on this slate. I think one of the most underrated things one can do in DFS, and nobody does it, is play cash games in a single entry football game. And even basketball, actually, too. Single entry showdown stuff. Sorry, I didn't mean single entry. I meant showdown. Single game, NBA and NFL. Because it's so easy. Now, I'm probably gonna jinx myself and end up having a terrible day in my main lineup today. But the cash lines are so low in these showdown slates, and like doubling up on something that's one game is never, it's not like it's the most exciting thing, but it increases the bankroll. And I find that like it's really not that hard to beat half the field in a showdown slate.
I have had a ton of success in showdowns, kind of playing that same way, and I never really made that connection. I just thought I kicked ass at it. But you're probably right. It's probably just like kind of an easy thing to do. So that does make sense. All right, we've BS long enough. We do have to get into some content eventually here. Kyle, you want to dive into things on the FanDuel side of the board?
Yeah, let's do it. In terms of a couple of these plays I'm going to mention, I will say they aren't the sexiest of plays, but I do think that they're a little bit safer, and I do think on FanDuel specifically, a couple plays do end up just being a little bit cheaper than you might expect for a couple of names, and honestly, some of that does kind of work hand in hand with some bad play, which is never fun to play guys who haven't been playing all that great. But in terms of a couple of options at the point guard, Chris Paul is an option that definitely stands out here. Obviously, with the sort of the way that the current situation of the slate with no Steph Curry and with increased minutes for Chris Paul 7-1, he does make some sense here. So Chris Paul, I think is the second highest FanDuel projection on the board of all point guards. Third highest price, but I just think the 7-1 price tag's a bit too cheap. So he really stands out there. Working hand in hand in the guard position. Obviously, you get a little bit of less flexibility on FanDuel, but still a lot of guys with dual guard eligibility. Klay Thompson also works hand in hand there, so he's a shooting guard. A couple other point guards, though, that makes some sense as cash options. Kyle Lowry, that kind of headlines one of the maybe not of the sexiest plays there, but he'll benefit from Hero being out and just the 5-2 price tag over there, so he makes some sense. Spencer Dinwiddie as well. He's probably third, I guess, in terms of the cash point guards on the board, I would say, but he has shooting guard eligibility, so he can probably find his way into some optimal lineups. Obviously, the two out that TJ mentioned earlier with Cam Thomas and Ben Simmons, that's going to help Dinwiddie not only get more minutes, but also bump up his usage and rebounding rates because, with Ben Simmons out, it's a pretty significant kind of vacation of rebounds there. So bump there for Dinwiddie. Already mentioned Klay Thompson as we bump over to shooting guards. Mikal Bridges is the guy who's really been kind of sputtering so far this season, I guess you could say politely. He was so good last year. He is 8K. I do think that is typically a really good price for him. And his ownership is kind of at a spot where it would make sense for him to look like a cash game play. But when you're on the optimal lineup, he's not in the current one based on our current projections. I think that makes sense just because of a couple guys who are a little bit cheaper, but I do want to mention his name just because I do think that price is a bit too cheap. Jalen Williams also makes some sense here. We have him for 33 minutes tonight. He's right around a 1 fantasy point per minute type player. He's shooting guard and small forward eligible, so he's another shooting guard. Like I mentioned already, said Klay Thompson and Dinwiddie. For small forwards, kind of zooming right through this here, I think Butler makes a lot of sense. You can play him at small forward and power forward, which is very helpful, especially on FanDuel. I've just found this season that power forward is a little bit, up in the air at times. So Butler, I think, makes a ton of sense, and he's probably a reason why maybe Bridges isn't popping in the optimal lineup because they are a very similar price tag. Cam Johnson there, another small forward, power forward eligible player, 6'1". He makes a lot of sense as well, benefiting from those two nets being out. On to power forward, I know we kind of just mentioned two of those guys there. Butler and Cam Johnson both being in the small forward and power forward eligible options there. A couple other names I do want to mention. I guess only one more, but Andrew Wiggins, 4'9". He's kind of like the Kyle Lowry type play of the small forwards. Not the sexiest play. He hasn't been all that great this year, but you kind of know what you're going to get with him, right? And then obviously with Draymond being suspended for going UFC on Rudy Gobert there, maybe he can get a couple of boosts in terms of minutes and the rest of the kind of stats there. So Andrew Wiggins also in play, sub 5K. And then for the center position, the guy that I'm looking at is Chet Holmgren, 7'8". For cash games, I actually like to start with the center position on FanDuel just because you get one center, and that's kind of a lot of times where a big decision can be made.
Got to make it count, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think Chet is the pick for me, but I do think it's to be between him and Bam tonight, the center spot.
Okay, very good. You mentioned the guy being out who gets the God. That was nice transition, Kevin. Good job. Good. I'm nailing it, guys. Ben Simmons being out and the rebounds that are vacated. Does that make you think about like maybe Claxton, or is there any other guys there that maybe would get a boost that can maybe pull down a lot more boards than they're used to?
Yeah, I think Claxton's definitely in that realm. I think Cam Johnson makes some sense there. I do think Claxton's a little bit more of a tournament play, but I still think he's definitely in play in all. If you wanted to make a stand on him in cash games, I do think Chet's probably the safer option, but I think you can do crazier things on a 2-game slate. But I do think Claxton is definitely a strong tournament play, especially on FanDuel. You get that extra point for blocks and steals.
Nice. Okay, very good. TJ, let's kick it over to you here and talk about kind of a tournament build, tournament thoughts. I feel like these are surprisingly strong plays that Kyle mentioned for a 2-game slate. Like, I feel good about most of these guys.
Yeah, it's a pretty solid slate. It's not, you don't have to get that uncomfortable with your lineups today. I will in a few spots, and that's mainly because I want to play SGA in 100% of lineups. It doesn't matter to me if it's a single entry or 150 for tournaments. I want SGA. He just has the highest ceiling on the slate. This is kind of some trivia for you, Kevin. SGA has played 10 games this season. Mm-hmm. How many times has he scored less than 45 fantasy points?
I'm going to guess never. I feel like he's so steady. He's done it maybe every single game.
One. He had one game where he played only 28 minutes because they got blown out by the Nuggets. Gotcha. Every other game was at bare minimum 45 fantasy points, and every 60 in 5 of the 10 games he's played this year.
That's wild, yeah.
A great floor, a great ceiling, and a great matchup today against Golden State. So I want to play as much SGA as I physically can. On these 2-game slates for tournaments, I typically, what I like to do is not, have half my team from one of the game and half my team from the other game. I want to game stack one of the 2 games. And then I'm going to basically just hope that the other one is a dud. Mm-hmm. So if I were playing 3 lineups today, I would probably game stack OKC and Golden State twice. And then I would game stack Brooklyn and Miami once in that 3-entry build kind of thing. But back to the position by position, SGA is by far my favorite at point guard. And then I do think you're probably sticking with either Paul, Dinwiddie, or Lowry as your second. Like, look, if you want to try Giddey, I don't even think that's the craziest thing to do on a 2-game slate. Pair SGA and Giddey together. Nobody's going to be doing that. But Paul and SGA would be my favorite way to go about it here, even at tournaments. And then I do like Giddey regardless of the position, even at shooting guard here as well, just because I think he's probably even going to come a little bit lower owned than that 30% just because he hasn't been that good this year. He hasn't played that many minutes. But on a 2-game slate, anything can happen. And then my favorite for tournaments on the slate by far is Brandon Podziemski, young rookie. I think he's a rookie, young guy regardless, who they have been kind of trying to give more minutes. And then in the first game without Steph, he played 38. And so Klay Thompson is barely more expensive, only $500 more. Klay Thompson is the starter. Klay Thompson's going to be about 70% owned, and we're projecting Podziemski for less than 10. So he is by far my favorite. I think he could outscore Klay in this game. And if he does, you are way, way over on the entire field. At that small forward position, I do like both Jalen Williams. Yeah.
Real quick. That was the game when Klay got in a fight and was ejected, to be fair, right? So it's not like that 38 minutes or whatever for Podnuski's is reliable.
No, but it was but like they're still without Steph, they're still without Draymond. Sure. And so it's 38, absolutely not. But we are like, that's why we're only projecting him for hold on, I gotta switch back to shooting guard here. We end up only having him projected for I clicked small forward again, that's why I can't find him. 22 minutes. I think it's going to be more likely to be like 28. Okay. I think it's going to be somewhere in between the things we see. So that's a bit of a again, like a tournament stand, because why we're not playing him in cash, because he's only projected for 22 minutes. But sure, if this game gets ugly or if he's just playing well, I think he could end up pushing for bigger minutes here. He played more than Moody and Payton, who we kind of thought would be more likely to step in at the point guard position, but he was the one who subbed in first and got some of that run even when Chris Paul wasn't on the court. So he's my favorite guy to take a shot on for tournaments. Don't expect 38. That was a great point because I forgot the whole Klay thing, but I do still think he can push for higher 20s minutes and potentially win you a tournament today. Small forward, Jalen Williams and Cam Johnson are my 2 favorites, but they're going to be picking up a lot of ownership. So I think a nice pivot is Jaime Jaquez. Lou Dort would probably be my 2 favorites to do it with. And I think there's crazier things you could do than go with Josh Richardson or Jonathan Kuminga. I probably would rather Kuminga there. But I do like Jaquez and Dort more than both of those guys. Dario Saric, even though that's chalk I'm going to eat, he's going to be 40%. That's not that crazy on a 2-game slate. I'm going to be getting to a lot of him today. He's definitely my favorite at the power forward. I'm going to be underweight on this first game, and so I'll be underweight on Jimmy. I do like Cam Johnson regardless, and I would rather just kind of take a shot on somebody like go full stack on the second game and go like one player like a Haywood Highsmith at power forward because it's not that great today, who maybe gets additional run in a blowout. Maybe Kevin Love. Maybe this game is close, but it's low scoring, and they decide to throw Kevin Love out there for some minutes. He plays 18 minutes and scores 24 fantasy points, ends up being optimal. So I don't hate punting with one of these Miami guys as kind of being like the only player I play from that game in a lineup. And then center, I am with Kyle 100%. Chad Holmgren is my favorite.
Sure. And that punt, even more important, is the punt that gets you SGA, right?
Yes.
That's what because I'm building this lineup without SGA, and I feel so good about it. But if he goes off for 70, I'm done, right? Like I'm pretty much toast. So I guess I do want to kick it over to DK. We should mention real quick, this show, by the way, is sponsored by Fanduel. Make sure you're checking out. Hang on, I got to get my Fanduel read here. Steve, did you give me the FanDuel read? Oh, here it is. Okay. Hey, bet $5 on any money line, get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins, and all customers get a profit boost every day. For new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 up. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Let's kick it to DK. Kyle, I guess I'll start with you. Am I supposed to be playing SGA in these builds, or can I just like live in that 6K, like 6 to 7K range with a lot of pretty damn good plays?
Yeah, I think that's another kind of. I think a lot of slates when you're building cash, you can start off with a couple of questions. I think on FanDuel, starting off who you're going to play at center is always one, but kind of the build that you want to have on DraftKings is definitely an important one. I actually misspoke earlier when I said Bridges wasn't in the current optimal lineup. He is, and I think that kind of parlays into the question where are you going to be building around SGA or a more balanced build where you have two guys in the 8 to 9K range, and then you're kind of building with some less expensive players. Currently, right now, the projections like the balanced build a little bit more, but it's hard to falter anybody who wants to play SGA in cash or anything like that. He's obviously looking amazing so far this season. He has a top projection on the slate. On DraftKings, though, you do have a couple of guys who are right there in terms of projection and for value perspective. Bam Adebayo, $1,400 cheaper, does project about 4 points fewer than SGA. So he would. With that math, it would be the better cash play to start your lineups with out of those two. But definitely no problem at all with building around SGA. I do think he is one of the guys with a very safe floor on the slate.
Okay. Well, you want to dive through and kind of walk us through a DK cash build, or if it's essentially the same, you can just highlight maybe the few spots that are different, whatever you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, I do think for the most part it is pretty similar. I think the one key difference on DraftKings compared to FanDuel is Bam Adebayo. He really stands out on DraftKings. He's only 9.2. He projects as the second highest scoring player on the slate. So building around him or even starting lineups with him as your most expensive player does make a lot of sense. Mikal Bridges is in the mix as well, even more so on DraftKings there. But I do think a lot of the guys like Chris Paul, Andrew Wiggins, Klay Thompson, they all make sense. Even Podziemski does. He's currently in the optimal lineup. I don't want to, give too much away there, but he's in the optimal lineup based on the current RG projections, which, by the way, he has arguably the most impressive stat line for 1 minute in the entire NBA. I think it was 2 games ago, 8 points in 1 minute with a rebound and a steal. So 12 and a half DK points in 1 minute.
He's going straight like Reggie Miller.
Yeah, seriously.
That's impressive.
Yeah, that's got to be up there in terms of over the past handful of years, of the most impressive 1 minute stat lines there. But we'll see what he can do in more minutes. But I do think for the most part, a lot of it is very similar. Jaquez pops his head in terms of cash play options over on DraftKings at just 4.5, about a 36.5 projected ownership projection as well. So I think for cash, you can also look at where our ownership projections are and get a good feel for the cash build there. And the last name I'll mention that's a little bit different on DraftKings compared to FanDuel, Dario Saric. You just have a little bit more flexibility. I think he's still in play over on FanDuel, but at 5.2 and with that added flexibility of the utility slot and the extra forward slot, you just get a little bit more options to play Saric there. So he's even more so in play on DraftKings compared to FanDuel.
Okay, very nice. With that, we will bring back in my guy TJ and talk about what you feel is different on DK, if you're doing anything different, or if really at the end of the day, a 2-game slate is a 2-game slate, and it's about the game theory that matters more so than the individual plays.
100% more about the game theory that matters more than the individual plays. However, having said that, there are a few plays that, especially on DraftKings, I just love. And so it's mostly going to be like FanDuel for me, but a bit more extreme. And so I would go Dario Saric, Brandon Podziemski, lock button, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, lock button, no matter how many lineups I'm playing. SGA, Podziemski, and Saric, every single lineup. And then I would like Chris Paul, I would love, and I would basically go one of Paul, Moody, or Gary Payton in every single lineup. I'm going to be heavily overstacking that front game, but even like the second game, but even when I was game stacking the first game, they would still include Saric and Podziemski in them. Because no matter how that game goes, whether it's close or whether it turns out to a blowout, they could have good games. The players in the first game that I like the best are Jaime Jaquez and Cameron Johnson by far. They're even cheaper than they are on FanDuel. Jaquez, I find it actually to be a very valuable salary saver on DraftKings. So Cam Johnson and Jaquez would be the two guys I'd go to the most there. Yeah, that's basically it. It's same on FanDuel, but there's a few players that because they're cheaper, I just like even more. So on a 2-game slate, I'm going to play them everywhere.
That is fair. We're going to see if we can get some questions in on the RG Discord or in the YouTube chat. If you're watching and you're thinking, wow, these guys are doing free content on a 2-game slate on a late show, they should be with their families or petting their dogs or whatever. We should, but we're here for you. And all we ask is not that you pay, but it's that you hit the little thumbs up for us at the bottom of your screen. We want eyeballs to keep this show free for our sponsor, FanDuel. So make sure you're hitting that thumbs up for us. That would help in a major way. I'm going to pull up the RotoGrinders Discord, and we'll see if we got some names coming in. Tony 2 times says, any interest in Royce O'Neal? Anybody got any Royce?
I don't have a ton of him. I think you make a case for it, though. I just think that with a couple of guys that he's kind of sandwiched around, for example, Jaquez, Dort, Andrew Wiggins, I just find myself getting a little bit less of him. But, Taylor has him tagged, so he's definitely in play, that's for sure. And we have him for about 30 minutes. So he's definitely in consideration, that's for sure.
Okay, great. Jackson says Martin is back. Will that impact Jaquez? Is that a concern?
It absolutely could, but it's a 2-game slate, so it doesn't really matter to me. What I like about Jaquez is he can play basically 3 to 4 positions, and so I don't think one individual player is going to impact his minutes that much. I think they just kind of want to get him out there now that he's off a minutes limit.
Gotcha. By the way, some folks noting that TJ's background is a little bit different, but it is the same background. You just panned a little bit.
Yeah. Move the camera around. Ever since I moved this couch in here, where my dog Obi-Wan is having a nice little snooze on a pillow, on a pillow that he ripped up. I started doing some PS5 streaming, and so I fired the couch in here. Got my TV beside me here with a whole bunch of vitamin water bottles. Sponsor me, vitamin water. And then I got the Spidey camera up. So same area, just a little bit of a computer pivot.
Looks good. I always just have a lame green screen behind me, so you're winning, man. Got a few more QQs coming in here. First, we'll get to that one. FanDuel GPP, TJ, Bam, Lowry, or SGA and Love?
My God. The answer is Bam Lowry, but it's a 2-game slate. I don't want to. If it's a big field, low dollar, you're okay with a risk tolerance. Mm-hmm. I like the idea of doing SGA and Love, but Bam and Lowry project for a lot more than those two together.
Right. There's a right play, and there's a this could happen and win you a tournament play on the other side of it.
Lowry and SGA is far more likely to win you first place, and it's also far more likely to get you last place.
Well said. Well said. All right. What else do we got here? Is Looney a decent pivot off of Saric? Any Looney interest from either of you?
Personally, I'm a little concerned about his potential minutes here. We've seen the Warriors kind of move away from him in times where he doesn't match up well. It might be a little bit more difficult for them to do that with no Draymond, but with Chet out there, a very agile center, we might see him kind of, range more towards that 20-minute mark rather than the upside of 28 to 30 minutes. So not a ton of Looney for me tonight.
Interesting. Okay. Mauricia says, and Kyle, you can have this one. FanDuel single entry, Saric at center. I feel like he was mentioned.
Yeah, I think he's definitely fine, and you can actually play him at power forward as well, which is what I would prefer to do. But if you wanted to just flex him into your center spot, that's fine as well. But I do think that in single entry, my preferred center is Chet Holmgren, and then my second center after that would be Bam Adebayo. But I do think Saric is definitely more than fine. But again, you can play him at power forward as well.
Okay. Derek's got a question for TJ. He says, DKGPP, Peyton or Moody?
I like Peyton quite a bit better.
Okay. Is it wrong that I don't know the difference between Moody and Looney? To me, they're just the two guys with double O's in their names, and I don't know who does what and who is who. So just an embarrassing admission for you guys. Better DK cash play, Kyle, Jacques or Jaquez or Pater Madusky?
I think Jaquez is a little bit of the better option just because he's at, in my opinion, a weaker position. $100 cheaper. I don't think that's a big deal. We did see some talk about Martin coming back, but I do expect Martin to still be limited. I don't think we see Martin play any more than 20 minutes or so. So I think Jaquez is still pretty safe in terms of his role. I think he's far less volatile than Podziemski tonight.
Okay, great. DKGPP TJ Brian, the Fire Marshal, says, which low-owned, cheap OKC player is breaking the slate tonight?
I don't necessarily think any of them will, but Kenrich Williams played 14 minutes in his first game back. Maybe that goes up a little bit. But no, honestly, I'm gonna go with the cheap Jalen Williams as the most likely one to do it, just because he could get 2 blocks, 2 steals, and 4 offensive rebounds that he keeps missing in a couple minutes.
Nice. Okay. We are less than a minute until lock. Make sure you get those lineups in here. On FanDuel, from a side, Jalen Williams or Cam Johnson straight up?
I'm assuming that's Jalen with an E. I'll give the slight edge to Cam Johnson. I think he has a little bit more of a ceiling here in this offense. So I'll give the slight edge to Johnson there.
Okay, very good. Beaner says, is Highsmith, I've seen his name a couple times. Highsmith, good play for FanDuel GPP?
Yeah, he's fine.
Okay.
Just fine. Not great, just fine.
Yeah, it wasn't exactly a ringing endorsement there, but thoughts on Looney? Same guy, Beaner, with that question. Kyle, got any thoughts on Looney?
Yeah, I do think that might be a game where we see him play fewer minutes here, just because I think it's going to be very difficult for him to match up against Holmgren. So I would probably not be too optimistic about it, and I think I prefer Sarge there.
Okay. Jackson Carr says Richardson and Lonnie or Podziemski Kenrich?
Podziemski Kenrich. That's a deep tournament flyer, and I like it. Let's go Pods and Kenny.
Okay, very nice. All right. Hey, we've caught up on all the questions. We should note, we mentioned we got an NFL show coming up after this. Kyle, you are on it. It's not immediately following this. What is it? Is it like 15 minutes after?
I think it's like 10 minutes after.
10 minutes after. Okay, so leave the computer up, hang around, and I assume it's on the same stream. I should know that, but I don't. Either way, we got an NFL show coming up. We got more content. We got content all freaking night. You get this man hanging with you all night long. TJ, anything you want to add, or shall we bounce on out of here?
No, make sure you tune in for the pre-log show, and then join me and Will live tonight talking about tomorrow's NBA slate on the morning grind as well.
Man, got a lot going on. Make sure you're tuning in here. We are going to bounce on out of here. So for TJ, for Kyle, for our wonderful production crew, always working hard behind the scenes. Guys, we appreciate you. We love you. And we will catch you tomorrow. Or a little later tonight. You have been crushed.